Hi, my name is John Tyler, and I'm about ready to bring you this biblical version of an age-old question that people have asked themselves for years. Ever ask yourself the question that they have asked? Why do Arabs and Jews hate each other? Well, you're about to find out, and from the biblical perspective. This hatred goes back thousands of years, all the way back to Father Abraham in the Bible, who is the religious, if you will, father of both the Arabs and the Jews. So go figure. I'll also point out that, in my opinion, the Jews and the Arabs of today have no idea why they hate each other, other than it's always been like that. And that's a fact, all the way back from Father Abraham to these days in 2019, there is hatred between the Jews and the Arabs. This is not a racist video. This is not an expose. It's strictly a Bible study to show you why there is this enmity or hatred between Arabs and Jews. I wrote about this, by the way, on a website called faithwriters.com, and over 8,000 people have read it. So I thought it's time to do a video instead of just writing it out there. I am the author of 8 books, and one of those books deals with this as well. It's called America's Two Holy Wars. Now, behind me is the Dome of the Rock. That is situated on the top of Mount Zion in Israel. That is controlled by Arabs, believe it or not. And a little further to the left of that, down a ways, is the third holiest shrine of the Arab world, called the AlAqsa Mosque. AQSA Mosque. Now, the AlAqsa Mosque is the third holiest shrine. The first is in Saudi Arabia. It's called Mecca. But all of this started 4,000 years ago, but I assure you that it'll all come to a very drastic conclusion in the not-too-distant future. Again, I speak as one who knows and has studied the history of this enmity, which means hatred, hostility, animosity between Arabs and Jews, and it all started back some 4,000 years ago to Abraham. Let's take a little trip back in time now to discover the origin of this enmity or hatred, and then we'll come forward to the present time in 2019, and I'll tell you why Israel will always be here on the planet. They will always be here on the planet. The Bible says so. Harm will come to Israel, but only after certain events take place in the not too distant future. And I'll explain what those events are by the end of this video. I have pointed out I am the author of 8 books, and the story that I'm revealing now is in a couple of those books. They're all free, www.relationshipbooks.com. Now, I state the fact that I wrote America's Two Holy Wars, which covers this exact topic. I wrote it back in 2004. So the reason I'm telling you this is that I want to avoid any semblance of it, some plagiarism that somebody will say, hey, I thought of that. Hey, I said that. Well, I wrote the book in 2004, and again, you can buy, no, it's free. All my books on there are free. Now, I'm going to use the Old Testament book of Genesis, but it mirrors the Hebrew book called Bereshit, meaning in the beginning. And it's Genesis chapter 16 and verse 1. And it says this, Now Sarah, Abraham's wife, bare him no children. And she had a handmaid. And the handmaid was an Egyptian, whose name was Hagar. And Sarah said unto Abraham, Behold, now the Lord hath restrained me from bearing. So I'm praying to you, I'm asking you, Abraham, go in unto my maid, in other words, have sex with my maid Hagar. It may be that I may obtain children by her. And Abraham, being typical guy of then or now says, sure, why not? Meaning that neither he nor his wife Sarah trusted God when God told both of them, you will have a child. So wait, be patient and all that, and typical of people. They didn't trust God for some reason. I think because they went on to say how old they were, and they just couldn't believe that it would happen. So Sarah suggests, look, go and take my Egyptian handmaid as your wife. And he did. He went in unto Hagar, and she conceived. So we know what that means. And when she saw that she, Hagar, the Egyptian maid, had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes. And Sarah said unto Abraham, my wrong be upon thee. I've given my maid to you. And when she saw that she had conceived, I was despised in her eyes. The Lord judged between me and you. Now, this is just from me, but animosity developed immediately between Hagar, the Egyptian, and Sarah, Abraham's first wife. God gave Sarah to Abraham as his wife. Sarah gave his second wife, Hagar, to him. Sarah wouldn't wait upon God for her child, so she gave her handmaid to her husband to bear a child for them. Once Hagar, the Egyptian, conceived and had a son, jealousy developed, of course. Hatred between the two women, one a Jew, one an Arab. But Abraham said unto Sarah, behold, your handmaid is in your hand. Do with her as you please. So, what happens next? Sarah dealt hardly, means very hard, with Hagar. She and Hagar fled from Sarah's face. And the angel of the Lord found her by a fountain of water in the wilderness, by the fountain in the way of a land called Shur, S-H-U-R. And this angel of the Lord said, Hagar, Sarah's maid, where did you come from? And where are you going to? Now, it's not that the angel didn't know, he did, but he wanted to ask some questions and set some policy aside right now. So Hagar said, I'm fleeing from the face of my mistress Sarah. Hagar had to flee from Sarah so that she and her son Ishmael disappeared and went away from Abraham. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, return to your mistress and submit yourself unto her hands. And the angel of the Lord said unto Hagar, I will multiply thy seed. Now get this. The angel of the Lord said to Hagar, the Egyptian maiden, who had this son with Abraham, the son called Ishmael, he said, I will multiply thy seed exceedingly, that it shall not be numbered for multitude. In other words, the Arab world will be developed from your son Hagar, your son Ishmael. And this event that the angel of the Lord talked about right here was the birth of the Arab nations. They had God's promise that they too would become great and multiply upon the earth. Now, God told Abraham the same thing. I will give you and Sarah a son, and you will be great, and your son, who will be named later, when you finally have him, and trust me, you will have offspring that will be multiplied upon the earth. But because Abraham disobeyed God and had a son, an Arab son, through Hagar the handmaiden, then God also had to promise that family, Hagar and Ishmael, that they would become great and multiply upon the earth as well. So the angel of the Lord said unto Hagar, behold, you are with child, and you shall bear a son, and you shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord hath heard thy affliction. Now, Ishmael was born when Abraham was 86 years old. God delivered a son to Abraham from Sarah. His name was Isaac. He was born when Abraham was about 100. So when Ishmael was 13, Isaac was born, and God kept his promise to Abraham. Abraham lived in an area that would later be called Israel, or Canaan land. Now Genesis 16:3 says this: Ishmael would grow up to be a man of the desert wilderness with a, now listen to what he's saying here, with a wild and hostile attitude toward people, exactly as God had described him to his mother before he was even born. And verse 12 says, and he, Ishmael, will be a wild man. His hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him, and he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. In other words, Ishmael shall always be hostile toward Israel, and his generation shall always occupy lands right under Israel's nose. This happened 4,000 years ago. To demonstrate that hostility and jealousy was taking place in the household, read verse 8 and 9 of Genesis 21. Here's what it says. Isaac was born of Sarah, finally. And when it came time to wean Isaac, Ishmael, his much older brother, began to mock. And the child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast the same day that Isaac was weaned. And Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, which she had borne unto Abraham, mocking. Again, animosity was building already between Hagar and Sarah. Sarah's hatred toward Hagar and Hagar's son caused Sarah to complain to Abraham. See, husbands, pay attention to what God's telling you, will you? Anyway, she complained as follows in verse 10. It says this, wherefore she said unto Abraham, cast out this bondwoman, this slave woman, and her son, for the son of this bondwoman shall not be heir with my son, even with Isaac. Sarah was now telling Abraham, this slave woman and her son will not inherit a thing from us. So, I can see why the Arabs are a bit ticked off. I can see how they want to treat Jews, the lineage of Isaac, that is, as slaves. And by the way, they did for many generations after that. Abraham, Sarah, and their son Isaac created a rift between Abraham, Hagar, and their son Ishmael, between what would be Israel and Ishmael, or the Arab world. So you can see it all started way, way back when. I can also see how the devil himself is happy to know that he can still cause this kind of division in the world. Satan's goal never changes. He will continue to cause division and strife right up to the very end of time. And this thing, the Bible says, was very grievous in Abraham's sight because of his son. Some of that grief appears to be that Abraham was caught between God and Sarah, and his two sons now, Ishmael and Isaac. You can see the dilemma in this family. It's not my job here to judge either side, but it's too bad that Abraham disobeyed God in the first place. Maybe it's a lesson for us to learn too, right? About being impatient and not waiting for God. If we are praying people. So God said unto Abraham, let it not be grievous in your sight because of the lad, and because of thy bondwoman Hagar. In all that Sarah hath said unto thee, hearken unto her voice. In other words, listen to your wife, for in Isaac shall your seed be called. And also the son of the bondwoman, Ishmael, will I make a great nation, because he is also your seed, as I pointed out before. The Arab nation is huge. And this is why God kept his promise to Hagar, that from her loins and his loins, Abraham, Ishmael was born, and a great and mighty nation, the Arab world, nation of Islam, would come to pass. Because Abraham failed to trust God, God blessed both children from his loins, Ishmael from Hagar and Isaac from Sarah. The Bible goes on to say that Abraham rose up early in the morning and took bread and a bottle of water and gave it to Hagar. Big deal, right? He put it on her shoulder and the child and sent her away, and she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. Isaac and Ishmael didn't meet again until Abraham died, according to Genesis 25, 9 and 10. Now, Ishmael lived for 137 years, according to Genesis chapter 25, verse 17. He bore, this is important, he bore 12 sons, and their tribes spread from Egypt to what is now called Iraq, formerly Mesopotamia, the land between the rivers. Mesopotamia, Iraq, is located between the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers. The place where Abraham was buried is found in a place known today as the Tomb of the Patriarchs in Hebron, where the conflict for control of it still rages between the descendants of Isaac and Ishmael, Israel and Arabs. Did you know that the Jews control only 18.7% of this tomb of Abraham, and Muslims control 83.3%? Here again is a reason that we have this enmity or hatred between the two nations. Both claim that Abraham is their religious father. The fight for Abraham's tomb is ongoing. This is a sacred place for worship for both the Jews and the Arabs. Seems a shame that they both fight over Abraham, who's the father of both the Jew and the Arab. Go figure. It's hard to figure. Now, many of the modern day Arabs correctly recognize that they are the descendants of Ishmael, while the Jews and the rest of the Israelites are descendants of Isaac, but all are descended from Abraham, Father Abraham. They both call Abraham father. Ishmael lived in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took a wife for him from the land of Egypt, according to Genesis 21:20 and 21. Now, it might be interesting to know that the wilderness of Paran is located in the Sinai Peninsula, and it's better known in the Bible story as the place where Moses and the Jews were relegated for 40 years, wandering in the wilderness while trying to get to the promised land of Canaan and what would be called Israel. Jews and Arabs have been hostile with one another for almost 4,000 years. Jews claim that Abraham's son Isaac was the true son of Abraham because Sarah had Isaac. Well, the Quran, that's the Arab version of the Bible, the Quran teaches that it was Ishmael that Abraham almost sacrificed on an altar and not Isaac. The Bible says, no, it was Isaac that was sacrificed on the altar almost by Abraham. That's a long story, and most of you maybe are not Bible enthusiasts. So I'm just telling you that the disparity between what the Arabs believe and what the Jews believe is this source or point of conflict that has existed since 4,000 years ago. The Old Testament, or Jewish Tanakh, claims that Isaac was the one that God asked Abraham to sacrifice, but withheld killing the child. History reveals, however, that Isaac was the son who Abraham nearly sacrificed. Many Jews and Arabs today have no clue at all why they fight constantly. Actually, not many people in the world get it. You say, so what? So what's the big deal? Why don't these people get over it and become friends? Good question. It's simple. They can't, because God said that they would always hate each other. God said it. John Tyler didn't say it. The Arabs didn't say it. The Jews didn't say it. God said it. There will always be enmity between these two factions. Israel was also a target, by the way, of Osama bin Laden, now dead, and his followers, but not for its oil. The creation of Israel is a crime, bin Laden said, which must be erased. A crime that must be erased. Osama knew that most Muslims hate the Jews, and he played to that element of hate. It won him allegiance from most Muslims, even though those under the rule and the authority for now of Arab states and the 1.9 billion Muslims worldwide. Israel, a tiny, tiny land. Why all the fuss? Israel, a teeny tiny land surrounded by what I would call the Arab world. Why all the fuss? Well, it's widely believed that the people of the nation of Israel are the chosen people of God. Yahweh, they call him. And that God protects Israel from its enemies, which he does. So far, that has been proven to be true. I didn't make this stuff up. It's just proven out to be true. Remember the famous Six-Day War, the 1967 Arab-Israeli War, also known as the Six-Day War, or the June War. It was fought between Israel and its Arab neighbors, Egypt, Jordan, Syria, and money was funneled into Arab coffers from Iraq and from Kuwait. As a result of the Six-Day War, Israel gained control of the Gaza Strip. Now, you have to know this. Now, this is all history from Abraham to the current day. So, as a result of that Six-Day War, as I said, Israel gained control of more land, of the Gaza Strip. They gained control of the Sinai Peninsula, the West Bank, and the Golan Heights, according to Wikipedia. And who can argue with Wikipedia, right? Arabs hate Jews because Jews always seem to win. Yet, it's the Arabs who have most of the land and all of the oil and the wealth of the Middle East. So why then is Israel the focus of all this attention? And why is it that Israel, though attacked by huge Arab forces surrounding it, has not succumbed yet? Well, we should begin to wonder how it is that the war after war against Israel still leaves Israel standing. And in fact, Israel has captured more land around them to act as a buffer zone between them and their enemies. And their enemies, the Arabs. I'm amazed at how tiny, again, that Israel is. If you look on the map, Israel is a teeny tiny place. And how vast the Arab lands are. Yet the Bible says that there will always be animosity and fighting between Arabs from Ishmael and Jews from Isaac. And Israel was always the target of Arabs ever since day one, and will always be the target. It's been like that since dirt was formed, pretty much. People ask then, if all that's true then, why in the world doesn't America and the rest of the world simply mind their own business and let these people kill each other off? And may the winner be declared so we can all go on with our lives. Well, if the Bible holds true, there will always be enmity, hatred between Arab and Jew, and there's nothing anyone can do to prevent it. America did not help Israel, by the way, during the Six-Day War, and yet Israel still won that war. I believe God wanted to prove a point during the Six-Day War because Muslim extremists or jihadists are stirring up conflict in the Middle East and now all over the world. But the point that God was going to prove when America didn't help Israel in the Six-Day War, we backed out because we were afraid that, the Arabs will shut off the supply of oil to America and we're going to be the losers. So we decided not to help Israel. That was President Johnson did that. So there you go. But anyway, so God set out to prove it. That's why it was a Six-Day War. In 6 days, Israel defeated all of the Arab enemies. That's what ticks the Arabs off today as well. So if you're not familiar why the Arabs are doing this, it's only because you are unaware of the goal of Islamic extremists called jihadists. Most Muslims are good people, by the way, who do not espouse jihad. When I say that Muslim extremists hate us too, and Israel, it's because they believe they had good reason to hate us. The predominant hatred of Muslim Arabs is that they hate Jews. Yeah, but they also hate America. Anybody who's called an infidel that does not believe in their God. As pointed out, it stemmed from the birth of Ishmael. Muslim extremists hate Americans because we've helped the Jews, or what they call the Zionists, and we have aided them and protected them. President Harry Truman signed a proclamation that recognized Israel as a nation back in 1948. Since then, we have been hated as much as the Jews have been hated by most Arab Muslims. You will see that what I say is not my belief or my words. It's taken from the words of people like Osama bin Laden. The Muslim extremist goal, jihad or holy war for world dominance. Now, ever hear of the Muslim Brotherhood? Keep in mind while you're watching this video that I wrote that book, America's Two Holy Wars, back in 2004. But now you are hearing a lot about the Muslim Brotherhood and ISIS or ISIL, especially concerning the attempted takeover of many Muslim countries like Tunisia and now Egypt, soon Jordan and beyond. That's their goal. It's the start of this global power grab. Jihad is a movement for the establishment of Muslim governance. Islamic radicalism was born in the 1920s with the creation of an organization of Egyptian origin known as the Muslim Brotherhood. From the outset, Islamic radicalism opposed not only colonialism, but also Western modernism and non-Islamic Arab governments. The radicalization process intensified with the formation of the State of Israel, and the movement itself gradually internationalized, facilitated by the emergence of the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, and the Gulf War, to the point of reaching its current dynamism. That's according to the source at globalsecurity.org. Now remember that name, Muslim Brotherhood and ISIS or ISIL, the major terror group that is radicalizing the youth all over the world to commit murder and mayhem among their own countrymen. Even among their own countrymen. Jihadists were also behind the in-your-face building of a mosque at the site of the World Trade Center, where Arab Muslim extremists destroyed 3,000 souls on 9/11/2001, but they failed. Now, another name for jihadist is terrorist. The words are interchangeable. Jihadist Muslims got their origin from the Arabic word qital, which is found in the Quran, the Muslim holy book. It means to fight or commit warfare. Jihad was developed as Islamic fundamentalist extremists, or jihadists, now called terrorists, began to translate the word fight, originally intended to mean fight to defend, and now it means to outright warfare against the infidel. The infidel is anyone who does not believe in their God, which is Allah. The infidel is any non-Muslim. It's you. It's the Jew. It's France. It's England. It's anybody that does not subscribe to basically the teachings of the Arab. They're broken up into two groups, Sunnis and Shia. And one group follows the teachings of Muhammad, the prophet. And this group will kill the other group who doesn't follow the teachings of Muhammad. So there's infighting even in the Arab world between Shia Muslims and Sunni Muslims. Okay. This is called jihadist teachings. Jihad means struggle. And it's the organized violence against non-Muslims for the purpose of building up wealth and power of the Islamic community and bringing the world under a single Islamic state. Now, let's go over that one more time because it's important. Jihad means struggle, and it's the organized violence against non-Muslims, everyone who's not a Muslim, for the purpose of building up wealth and power of the Islamic community and bringing the world under a single Islamic state. World government, world power. That's their goal. This goal is what Islamic extremists have been trying to do since, in my opinion, the invasion of Kuwait in 1990. The Muslim extremist goal is to bring the world under a single Islamic state, a one world government, a one world theocratic government. You will now begin to hear the term caliphate or caliphate. If you boil it all down, it simply means that Islamic extremists want to rule the world through a dictator regime run by a caliph. And they want to rule with an iron fist, using another term that you had better come to grips with, Sharia law. Look it up, Google it, and see what you come up with. The laws of Sharia mean everything you do is governed by theocratic, in this case Islamic laws, and things like adultery is punishable by death or stoning. And they would punish, imprison, or kill anyone who does not acknowledge Allah as the supreme being. By the way, I've studied the Bible since I was 11 years old, and now I'm a senior citizen. So when I read or see the news, my Bible verse memory comes to the forefront. The goal is to have one nation under Islam, ruled by Islamic jihadists who are currently led and organized by imams. Don't let anybody tell you differently. The world's most prominent Islamic self-appointed leader and sponsor of terrorism are these imams. You hear that every day in the news. Imams from this mosque or that mosque sponsoring terrorism. Why? Enmity, hatred. Of who? Anybody that's a non-Muslim. That's the extremist Muslims, so don't get me wrong, it's not all Muslims. It's these jihadists, these Sharia law people. Jihadist Muslims are in competition for world dominance by another group called progressives throughout the world. And I'll show you how these two factions are going to merge a little later on. Muslims are monotheistic. They believe in one God, Allah. They obey the teachings of Muhammad. Sunnis, Shia, differentiate here. Muhammad the Prophet. They don't hold to the notion that there is a triune God, meaning Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Nor do they subscribe to the belief by Christians of this triune God, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. They also do not believe in the God of Israel, Jehovah's Yahweh. Their God they believe in is Allah. The origin is said that he was the son of a moon goddess. Who can say for sure, but you can't help to notice that there's a crescent moon on their flags. Islam is to be imposed by force, according to Muhammad. Now get this again. Islam is to be imposed by force, not by politics. Islam is to be imposed upon the world by force. And he said also, I have been ordered to fight with the people until they say none has the right to be worshipped but Allah. This is why there's animosity, hatred between Muslims, jihadists, and other Muslims who don't follow the teachings of Muhammad. And Muhammad goes on to say this, and whoever says none has the right to be worshipped but Allah, his life and property will be saved by me, Muhammad said. Otherwise, it will not be saved by me. That's in Al-Bukhari, Volume 4, Section 196. Muhammad the Prophet lived for 62 years from 570 AD to 632 AD. Now, Muslim extremists want to kill and oppress the Jews, and they want to kill Americans as well, because we helped Israel to become a nation in 1948. And basically, we help them to this day. Donald Trump's the president right now, 2018, 2019, 2016, 2017, maybe 2020, who can say? But these jihadists hate America for that reason, because we continue to stick up for Israel. Muslim extremists also target anyone who helps Jews or Americans. France, England, even Russia have had, I think 300 kids were killed by Islamic fundamentalist jihadists in a school, kids. So I don't approach this from my perspective, but from the actual words of Osama bin Laden. This is what he had to say when he was alive. I have to stress the necessity of focusing on the Americans and the Jews, for they represent the spearhead with which the members of our religion have been slaughtered. Any effort directed against America and the Jews yields positive and direct results. Allah willing, so said bin Laden. It is far better for anyone to kill a single American soldier than to squander his efforts on other activities, so says bin Laden. The American government is leading the country toward hell. We say to the Americans as people and to American mothers, if they cherish the lives and if they cherish their sons' lives, they must elect an American patriotic government that caters to their interests, not the interests of the Jews. I could go off into the Democrat, Republican, conservative realms, political realms, and you can also see the infighting there. Trump wants to support Israel, not so much on the side of Democrats. ISIL, which is ISIS, means the same thing. And ISIL means you harm. They have said so in the above statement from bin Laden that they subscribe to. He's also said so in a written fatwa or decree, which I delve into in my book, America's Two Holy Wars. You need to read his words so you can see firsthand what his mission is and how he intends to carry it out. If we ignore him and his ideology, then jihadists will do you more harm. We'll discover that we must stay in the Middle East. Unlike Donald Trump says he wants to get out of Iraq, we must stay in the Middle East because to bring our troops home means we agree to allow jihadist terrorist groups like ISIS to conquer the Middle East. That's their goal. First, they will own the oil wells there and in Africa, and then they will come after you, stronger than ever, with an army of dedicated followers who will fight to the death to achieve their leaders' objectives. Now, right now in January of 2019, I'm concerned that President Trump's objective of pulling troops out of the Middle East may create opportunities for jihadist Muslims to regroup. And then they could easily take over the entire region, like they almost did in Iraq, by the way. So I hope President Trump gets the message, and I believe he probably has, because it seems like he's backed away from that goal of removing all the troops from Iraq and then Afghanistan. That would leave a huge void. The oil will pay for millions of soldiers. Imagine the Arab world, fundamentalists, jihadists, taking over all the countries, initiating Sharia law in their effort for world dominance, but just taking over the entire Arab world. Imagine that. And then they own all of the oil. That will pay for millions and millions of soldiers from the pool of 1.9 billion Muslims worldwide, and it will easily pay for weapons, including those of mass destruction. There is a second holy war against you at this time as well. There is another religion, I call it a religion, that has attempted to take over your minds and your rights under the Constitution, and you and I have to let this go on or we've let it go on for the last 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 years. That religion, which is defined, let me define religion for you right out of Merriam-Webster's dictionary so that you get it. Any religion is defined as a system of beliefs held to in strong ardor or conviction, and that is a religion held by progressive liberal secularists, aka progressives, like Obama, Hillary. We can go all the way back to Kissinger. We can go back 60 years to find these progressives, and they exist all over the world, especially now in the United States. And don't put a Democrat or Republican label on progressives. They're found in every walk of life. School teachings. I could go on and on and on. The progressive liberal secularists have been around for over 100 years and now in power in America and throughout the world. Their goal, coincidentally, coincidentally, is also to rule the world through global governments, same as the Arab extremists. They will be the ones who carry that goal to fruition. And as strange as it might seem to you, these anti-God progressives, the ones who want to remove "in God we trust" from our currency and who hate the U.S. Constitution, are feverishly jockeying into position to accomplish that objective. A one world or global government is the only way these progressives are going to achieve this sought-after world dominance. But the Muslims are encroaching into their power struggle as well. This is a problem for progressives. The answer, so you will see in a relatively short period of time, is that they will unite with the religious Islamic fundamentalists using jihadist tactics and vying for the world to be run by Sharia law. They will unite with these anti-God progressives, in my opinion. Not only in my opinion, they're starting to do it now. And states like Michigan, they're entering into politics. You watch and see, you'll see. Now, why do the progressives want to unite with the jihadists and Sharia law? Because progressives have recognized that the ends justify the means to get control over the population of the world. The Bible speaks of, by the way, this one world government coming into power. So there's nothing you can do about it. There's nothing I can do about it. There will be, with a one world government, the Bible predicts, by the way, there will be one currency and it won't be paper. Paper money, anybody's paper money, will become worthless. Gold will back up the power of the global currency that will be forthcoming, in the IMF, or International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank will be the financial leaders, replacing what is now known as the Federal Reserve in the United States. The currency, however, will become a microchip. Now, this is 2019. The technology over the past 10 or so years has become such that a tiny, tiny microchip can be buried under your skin, and it will reveal who you are, your GPS location, everything about you, medical records, everything. No person on the planet will be able to buy or sell anything, especially food, without first taking a microchip, or as the Bible calls it, a mark, that will be implanted under their skin. The Bible says under the skin of the right hand or in the forehead. This is being done right now in senior citizens in Florida, and over time it'll become the norm. They'll use the guise that pets should have these chips first in case they get lost. Then children should have them because of the rash of kidnappings, sex trafficking, murders, you name it. Seniors, as I said, now have them implanted, in case they wander away from the nursing homes. I won't elaborate, but I'll tell you that over 4,000 years ago, this was predicted by Daniel the prophet, over 4,000 years ago, and later prophesied or predicted in what we call the New Testament. All details are in my book, America's Two Holy Wars. And again, you can get those for free at www.relationshipbooks.com. Don't worry about Israel, by the way. They will be around for a long, long time. Forever, actually, according to the Bible. Some wonder if Iran will force Israel into a war. The answer is that Iran is, in fact, trying to goad Israel into a war because their imams sincerely believe that they are the chosen ones to usher in the Islamic Messiah, called the 12th Imam. Before the Imam, the 12th Imam, or Al-Mahdi, it's called, M-H-A-D-I, before the Imam can return to the earth, however, according to Muhammad the Prophet, much violence must be perpetrated upon the earth. How, in your personal observance of current world events, is violence being played out? Ask yourself if the Irish or the Scotch are causing violence throughout the world. No. God forbid that I should set political correctness aside, but I shall. Muslim extremists called jihadists are carrying out violence upon the earth with one purpose in mind, and that is to do as Osama bin Laden and now his followers have called for and jihadist teachings espouse. This, jihad, the organized violence against non-Muslims for the purpose of building up wealth and power of the Islamic community and bringing the world under a single Islamic state, as I've already pointed out. That's their goal. The Bible tells us in many instances that Israel will still be around, so don't worry about them falling by the sword of their Arab enemies that surround them. Here's what's supposed to happen according to Bible prophecy. And the so-called end of days will be upon us as this moment that this event takes place. An event will take place whereby a holy temple will be built upon Mount Zion, the top of Mount Zion. That's where I am right here, with the Dome of the Rock and the AlAqsa Mosque, controlled by the Arab world. The Roman government, then in power, destroyed the last holy temple that was here on Mount Zion on August 4th, 70 AD. The problem is that Arabs do not own Mount Zion, but they control the Temple Mount. They have two edifices there, as I pointed out, the Dome of the Rock with the Golden Dome, and the third holiest Muslim shrine down a ways over to the left, the AlAqsa Mosque. How then do Jews get to build their holy temple on the site controlled by Arabs? Jesus gave us some insight into this event that would take place just before a horrific event known to many theologians as the tribulation period comes into play. Literally, at that time soon, all hell will break loose on the earth. I can say that it is certainly within the realm of possibility, having put biblical prophecy and world current events into play, that Iran's sole purpose in life is to provoke Israel into a war. They've said so on many occasions. Their former president, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, has stated on many occasions, including one in front of the United Nations General Assembly, he said Israel must be driven into the sea. Sounds like Osama bin Laden. Israel, however, is taking the stance that they will never allow Iran to develop nukes. The event, in my calculated judgment, will occur when Israel performs a preemptive strike against Iran and possibly Syria. Nobody on the planet will blame Israel, although they will be condemned for using their nukes to accomplish their goal. But once that terrible event occurs, Israel will be emboldened to literally kick all the Arabs out of Israel, and especially off the top of their holy mount, Mount Zion. When that happens, my dear friend, then Israel will take that opportunity to do what they have always wanted to do for 50 years or more, and that is to build their holy temple right where it used to be, under the Dome of the Rock. It might take 3 years from them to build this holy temple, maybe 3.5, which is exactly what I think will happen, because it fits in directly with the prophecy of the New Testament concerning the Great Tribulation period of 7 years that will occur during the end times. Halfway through that period of tribulation, or 3.5 years, the temple will be finished. God said that he would take his elect, those who choose to follow the teachings of his son Jesus, that he would take his elect, or those who have believed in the gospel of Christ, out of the terrible portion of that tribulation period, the last 3.5 years of the 7 years. Therefore, it is my contention that born-again believers will be extracted at the point where the holy temple on Mount Zion is finished and becomes desecrated according to prophecy in the Bible. That's good news for born-again believers. If you read John 3:3, Jesus said, unless you are born again, you will not see the kingdom of heaven. So go read that for yourself, not something I made up or something that some Christians made up. When the Holy Temple is finished, then the Arab world will have accomplished their mission of waiting patiently in the wings for that day, and they will attack Jerusalem with everything they have. This is the time spoken of when Jesus said, when you see the temple being desecrated, look up into the sky, for your redemption draws near. A lot of theologians miss that. They read Matthew chapter 25. Instead, Luke 21, 10 through 28 is what reveals what I just told you. The story in great detail. It speaks of Israel having only 144,000 people left alive after the Arab attack of the newly built temple on Mount Zion. Only 144,000 people will be left alive, and this will occur at the hand of the Gentiles, non-Jews or Arabs. The bad news for born-again believers is that the Christians, those who follow the teaching of Christ, and this remnant of Jews will be persecuted, tossed into prison, and betrayed by parents, brothers, sisters, relatives, and friends for their faith. Now, the good news is the Bible also says, not a hair on your heads will be touched. Ta-da! This all happens before the rapture or the extraction takes place. This means, in my educated opinion, that Islam and the progressives will be in power just before the Holy Temple is completed on Mount Zion, behind me. The global government will already be established according to Bible prophecy and what we see going on in the political realm of today. This is why you keep hearing globalization by progressives, globalists. Trump says nationalists, let's protect America. Progressives say, no, we want to open borders to America. We want globalization. We want to help all nations and give them money and so forth and so on. This is where Sharia law will dictate punishment for all non-believers in Allah, but no born-again believer will be killed, which is good news. The reason that no believer will be killed is that the great taking up or the rapture of the saints or believers will happen just around the time that that temple is finished and desecrated according to Luke 21. Then people who remain on the earth will go through 3.5 years of the latter part of the 7-year tribulation period, and it will be absolute hell, a judgment from God himself. I have another book on my relationship book website that is free, and perhaps now it's a time for you to read it. It's entitled Heaven. How do I get there? That answers a whole lot of questions, explains what heaven looks like, so forth and so on. Who's there, who isn't there. So now you know more than you might have wanted to know. The question of why Arabs and Jews will never get along should be answered to your satisfaction. Some will call me a nutcase, but leave that verdict on the table until you see the Arabs being kicked out of Israel in the very near future. And if you see that holy temple being built, then perhaps you should read Heaven, How Do I Get There? Real quick. Here is the anticipated timetable of all of this to come to pass. I know a lot of people, preachers, you name it, nutcakes, have said, hey, it's going to happen 1914, blah, blah, blah. And it doesn't. Or they'll go to the top of the mountain with their parishioners and nothing ever happens. But this you can take to the bank. When you see the first shovelful of dirt being removed by Israel from Mount Zion to build their temple, you have about 3.5 years to make your decision to ask the Lord to become your Lord and Savior. Listen, you don't have to believe anything I say. But when these things happen, come back and review this video. With that, I bid you adieu. And stay tuned, because we have more of these Bible studies coming up that you can share with your friends. With that, again, I will see you somewhere on the campus here.